The date is August 4th, 1994. Jack Jersowitz, Working Brainstorms. He talks a lot about me, and in a positive way. He says that I know more about the system than anybody he's ever worked with. And so before I play this show, I'm gonna let you hear a little bit from what Jack...
I can hear you a little bit.
Yeah, don't talk back there. Good evening. Once again, this is Brainstorms. I'm Jack Jersowitz of the Workers' Revolutionary League, and I'd like to speak tonight about this question that everybody's talking about, and which they may as well have air in their heads because what they're saying is absurd and ridiculous, while the question of violence goes on and on and on, and perhaps we can offer a point of view that puts the question of violence in this society into some clarity, into some place where we can examine it and understand what our problem is. And I'm going to talk for a couple of minutes, so the phone is going to wait. In that regard, the question of violence, I'd like to start with the arrest of Kim Jong Ingram of the so-called Folks Gang, allegedly for, and pay attention to the language I use in this case because it's very important, allegedly for being involved in the arson that killed 2 young children at one of the city's wonderful housing projects, which also have something to do with the question of violence. The first thing that one notes about the Kim Jong Ingram arrest is that they seem to have made an arrest based upon the fact that somebody said something about the Folks Gang being involved. I'll wait, the phone call will wait. And yet nobody has offered any solid evidence that Kim Jong Ingram is involved at all. There are some questions, as a matter of fact, that come up when one looks and pays attention to what's being said by some of the police. God knows what he's doing with all those signs out there. There are some questions involved, of course, and nobody has offered any evidence as yet as to why they've arrested Kim Jong Ingram. Kim Jong Ingram has deferred a hearing prior to his finding an attorney. And I don't know whether he's found an attorney yet or not, or whether they're going to supply him with one. And yet, already there is talk of seeking the death penalty, or whether they're going to seek the death penalty. There is a mayor who demonstrates his lack of violence, if that's what it is, by going in to see the face of this man in order to understand what it is about these people. I guess he's talking about Kim Jong Ingram amongst others. I don't want that one up there, guys. That date has changed, and we haven't changed it. Take that panel out, please. He's gone in to see the arrested man, Kim Jong Ingram, before he's even had an arraignment hearing or a bind-over hearing or any kind of hearing, before he even had an attorney, and he's gone in to see the face of these young violent men, and in doing so he has begun to prejudice any possibility of Kim Jong Ingram, if indeed there's grounds for a trial at all, to get any kind of a fair trial. And this mayor is an attorney and has been an attorney for a great many years. He knows the rules. He knows the way that this so-called system of justice is supposed to function. He knows that there is supposed to be a presumption of innocence on the part of those who are brought before the law. He knows and understands that he prejudices that kind of a presumption when he goes in to look at the face of these young, violent people and then goes to the press with it. And he also understands something else, which is of even greater import. And that is that in calling for more police officers to be on the streets to go after the folks gang, if there is such a gang, he is essentially calling for mob rule. Because there is no evidence, none that we've heard at all, that the folks gang as a gang, again, if such a gang exists, was at all involved in a concerted effort to firebomb an apartment where 2 young children died. And that's not to say that the firebombing of the apartment isn't terrible and isn't a violent act, but in order to be able to judge, socially at least, why and how such things occur, we need to understand what creates those situations. Yes, no doubt, whoever threw that firebomb was greatly upset and greatly angered, was probably feeling dissed in the expression of young folks on the street, and feeling that way and knowing no other way to deal with it and having no other armament to deal with it internally, that is in terms of one's feelings, great anger is unleashed and somebody lights a Molotov cocktail and throws it. And that is the basis upon which a great deal of violence takes place in this society. People who have no other future, who have no other way, are called names, made to feel inferior, dissed, again, I like that term, disregarded, dismissed, and therefore react with anger because they don't understand their own circumstances and their own situation and the society that put them there. But when Campbell, the mayor of this town, goes in and looks in the face of violence, he's doing violence and preparing violence and preparing a frame-up if this young man had nothing to do with it. And he's preparing a frame-up of a bunch of other people by turning his cops loose against gangs, not just the folks gang, but all of these so-called gangs on the street. And he's preparing mob rule. And he's preparing to make an appeal, or he is making an appeal, to all of those folks out there in the city who are a little bit better off than most, and some that aren't, and saying to them the only way we're going to have any peace in this society is to go after these gangs, these young toughs. And the problem is their homes and their parents and so on and so forth. You've all heard it 1,000 times. And so those who start out in this society disadvantaged, for whatever reason, and in Atlanta, of course, and in the South in general, it's mostly a question of color and color discrimination. But they're not the only poor folk in this society. There's lots of other folks who are not necessarily black who are poor and who are disadvantaged. And so he starts this mob rule going by appealing to people who are terrified and worried about the situation, as they should be, and covers up the real source of the violence in the society, covers up the violence that is done whole groups of people, for instance, the people who live in Techwood homes or the other housing projects of this society, who are facing an Atlanta housing authority that means to put them out on the street. Now, that's not the kind of violence where somebody throws a firebomb through a window. That's not the kind of violence where somebody pulls a gun and shoots you down. But it leads to that kind of violence because it makes the situation for people who are just trying to survive even worse. And it creates the social conditions under which there are people out on the streets who, having no other way to deal and no other way to express their right to exist, do so with a gun. And I tell you what, I sit here tonight to say that there is another way to those young people. We'd like to meet them. We'd like to talk to them. If we put that information number up on the screen again, guys, we can give you my number. It's 627-1887, 627-1887. I'd like to hear from you. Leave me a phone number so I can call you back. If you're one of the young people who belong to one of these so-called gangs or social groups, and you want to discuss these questions, give me a call. We'd like to talk about that. Or if you're somebody out there that knows some of these people and can introduce me to them, I'd like to meet them. We'd like to talk about it. Because there is another road. There is a future, but it means taking your own life in your own hands and turning this society upside down by becoming part of a revolutionary movement. The problem isn't the violence. The problem is who perpetrates the violence in the society. You don't hear Bill Campbell or any of the others, any of the preachers like, oh, well, we ain't going to go into it. You don't see them out there screaming about the videos. They talk about the videos on television. You see them screaming about the videos of a smart bomb. And this is a video right out of the front of the smart bomb, angling its way down into a shelter in Baghdad filled with women and children and murdering them. You don't see any protest about, not from Bill Campbell certainly and his cops and all the others in this city, you don't see any very loud protest about the murder of probably tens of thousands running away, trying to escape the war zone in Kuwait and Iraq. You don't see them protesting the violence that is done by the U.S. government in Nicaragua and other places. No, not very loud anyway. You don't see them calling for trials for the individuals responsible for that. But when it's a bunch of poor young kids out on the street, that's where the violence suddenly finds its way into the courts, and they're going to make examples of these people. They prejudice their case in advance. They say that we're going after all the gangs. As I say, mob violence. Phone number here is 627, no, excuse me, that's not the phone number here. The phone number here is 873-6, oh well. Where's Master Control? You can put the number up, guys. Gary, you put the number up on screen. 873-6712, right? Or 13. There it is. Somebody knows the number. Yes, go ahead, please.
Hi.
Hi. Did you know that you're violent? You're violently sick. What are we going to do? Yeah, he's playing bingo back there. Oh, well. 873-6713. Yes, go ahead, please. Now, you wouldn't think of that as violence, but that's violence to a serious discussion and serious ideas, and the violence that was done to those folks is of a very subtle nature, but it made idiots of them. Yes, go ahead, please.
Hey, Jack, how's it going, man?
Okay, man, how are you?
Not too shabby. I'm eating my pizza. I'm
Yeah.
doing okay. Have you heard about that incident that took place last week? Something about at an abortion clinic, some sort of violence was done?
Oh, yes, of course, the doctor that was murdered, and his escort that was murdered.
Oh, man. What else? I mean, what provoked that? What happened?
What do you mean, what provoked it? You know what it's about.
No, I don't. I mean, that's why I'm calling you. What provoked it? What in your mind provoked
He
it?
was a doctor that does abortions, and there's the violent right wing of the church out there that
Violent
doesn't
right wing
like
of the
it.
church.
Yeah, and they decided to off him.
So that,
You didn't see anybody saying they're going to go after that gang of right-wing anti-feminist, anti-women, I should say, not anti-feminist, anti-abortionists, did you?
so I suppose you're not going to be visiting that clinic to get an abortion, eh?
Excuse me? Oh, well. See, here's another violent idiot. Really? Yes, go ahead, please.
Yeah, Jack, how you doing?
Okay, how are you?
All right. In your introduction, I thought I heard you say that the problem of violence does not stem from the home. Is that what you said?
That's right. That's garbage.
Well, then where does it stem from?
Well, how do you get... Let's do it the simple way to start with.
I just want you to answer my question.
Yeah, I'm going to. I'm going to start the simple way to answer your question. First aspect is, if your premise was correct, that the violence at the present level and the present generation starts in the home, how does it come about that we have homes that contribute to that kind of a situation. I mean, why is it that some folks have come from homes where there is poverty, where there's only one parent, if that, where the parent may be involved with drugs and alcohol or may be abusive, and in other homes we have people who are well off, who have cars, a good way to live, a fine education, and therefore, allegedly, and this is untrue as a fact, we don't have any violence in those homes. In fact, we have a good deal of violence in those kinds of homes as well.
You're exactly right.
I know that.
The reason that is that the child or the kid is not receiving enough attention, is not being taught the proper things to know better, to not have violence.
Well, he grows up in a society that has done violence to not only to his generation and the generation of his parents, but to generations of his parents.
Violence to the generation?
Of course.
How?
If you know anything about the history of capitalism as an economic system, then you know that for 600 years or so that capitalism has existed, there has always been a pool of poor, unemployed, would-be workers, and that they are the folks who are at the bottom of the stack and have always been there. It doesn't matter about individuals here and there in any one society, but historically, that kind of a pool of what's the word I'm looking for? It's a technical term for it economically, but workers who are available to hold down the price of labor, essentially, a reserve corps, you might say, of workers, have always existed in this society. That is, in capitalist society.
But in today's society, not talking historically.
Well, the problem is that today's society doesn't exist except through its historical connection.
Well,
Do you understand me? Do you follow what I'm saying?
completely. But what I'm trying to tell you is that what the parent's job is, regardless whether they're working or not, is to put those morals into their child.
But if the parents never learned them because they came from a background that is the same, and the ones before came from a background that was the same, and you can go follow that back all the way, how can anybody do that?
It's not true. My parents aren't like that. There are a lot of people.
Well,
out there
but
that
that's
like
your,
it.
but there's an error in starting with your subjective existence. Start with the general scheme and the way things operate as a whole. You can't start with yourself as an individual.
Then we'll start back to when capitalism wasn't in existence.
Well,
So it had to go back then also.
that's right. And the previous societies also saw a great deal of violence.
You can't completely blame it on capitalism.
Well,
No, you just have to blame it on the
it's
individual parent.
not even a question of blame.
Okay,
It's a question of the general social phenomena of this economic system.
right.
And you can't blame it on the individual because they're not individuals.
Well, maybe blame isn't the right word. But
You're right. Blame is not the right word. The problem here is to understand, in order to understand how to do something about it.
and I commend you on trying to meet with these people and try to show them that violence isn't the right way. But then
Oh,
again,
I didn't say I wasn't going to show. I was going to show them violence isn't the right way. I think it's an appropriate time and place for violence.
well,
It's not one on one on the streets.
you know what I meant. I mean,
Well, I don't know. I'm making sure we had it clear between us. Go ahead. I'm sorry.
but while I commend you on this, I don't think it's a good idea or the right thing to do to say that they need to join a revolutionary movement in order to get rid of the violence in this country.
Why not?
Why do I not think that's the right thing?
Mm-hmm.
Because I don't think that'll really solve the problem.
Why not?
Because I think what will solve the problem is for the youth of today to have morals and to know what is right and wrong.
Well, how are morals determined? Are the morals we have that are proposed today in this society the same as the morals that existed, say, 1,000 years ago?
Are the morals similar?
Yeah, are they the same?
They're the same, but
Are they the same?
society has changed a little to where you have to be taught different things. 1,000 years ago, you didn't have to be taught to, say when you're walking in your car to be careful who's following you, stuff like that.
Didn't have cars 1,000 years ago.
That's what I'm saying. Society's taken a turn where the things that you're taught are different.
Do we hang horse thieves today?
Do we hang what?
Horse thieves today?
Not horse thieves. We hang.
No, we don't hang them, do we? Because horses are not an important piece of existence today, are they?
Oh, well, we put them in jail.
Well, we may, but we don't hang them, right?
We hang killers.
Well, we may do that. I'm not so sure that's a good thing. But what I'm trying to get at is the question of are morals today the same as they were 1,000 or 10,000 years ago? And I don't see how you can say anything but no.
Inner morals, yes,
Inner morals? What? Really?
of course.
Let's go back to Greek society. Did anybody make a big moral to-do about the fact that some men loved other men?
They make a big ado. No,
Did they make a big to-do about it?
no.
There's people who do that in this society and say it's immoral, don't they?
Well, I don't think it was big of a problem back then. I don't think that there were as many people that,
You don't?
No.
You don't know much about Greek society.
well, maybe so, but, you know, that's a different story. What I'm talking about today's society.
Well, but the problem is, in order to measure your so-called moral values in today's society, and in order to understand whether they have the validity you would give to them, you have to understand, first of all, where they come from.
So,
And in order to do that, you have to see their historical connection, right?
so what you're saying is that the morals that I have inside of me, that my parents have taught me, came back from all the way from the Greeks, and that's the reason I'm not violent?
No, I'm not saying that at all. I'm saying that
Why are there
that the
people-
morals you have in you today, that your parents taught you, they may very well have beaten into you. I don't know.
They didn't beat it into
Well, then they loved it into you. They treated you so well, you accepted everything they said at face value, and now you're having a hard time considering that maybe those so-called moral perceptions are not necessarily valid.
Well, I know what do you mean by treat me or love me so well that it's
Well, people influence you various ways, and one of the ways they influence you without doing anything deliberate is they feed you, they house you, they clothe you, they love you, if they're good parents by our standards. And as a result, the tendency of children brought up that way is to believe their parents and not question.
Well, I don't believe everything my parents have told me.
Well,
But I take what they do tell me, and, I consider it, and therefore I know some of it's right, some of it's wrong.
I understand. There's another thing that happens, and that is that in general, your parents didn't teach you, and society in general doesn't teach you, critical thought. That's a real, we have this business in this society in which we're always yelling, people are always yelling about how students today are bad at sciences, bad at math, so on and so forth. And what happens, oh, no watch today. That's the way it goes. And the reason nobody seems to understand why that's so is that unlike a good part of the rest of the world, we don't teach critical thinking here. We teach people to go along in order to get along. You follow me?
Yes, but you don't have to teach critical thinking to know that killing is wrong.
I tell you what, if you don't teach people to examine every idea that's put in front of them and to remorselessly, coldly, simply as an exercise in their brains and automatically take it apart, turn it this way and that way, inside and out, and examine it in order to determine its validity, where it comes from, and how it comes into existence, and you haven't taught anybody how to think.
Nobody does that.
They do that in other places, much more than we do it here.
Every person is taught to do that kind of analysis on every idea. I don't think that's right.
I think it's absolutely the only way to do anything.
Well, you're not going to get a society where everybody does that.
Why not?
Because people just don't. People believe in what they believe, and they're not going to.
Where did you get that idea?
It's a fact.
How do you determine it's a fact?
Because it's a plain and simple fact that there are people
If you know any history
in what they believe in are not going to sit down and say, well, maybe the thing that I believe in so strongly isn't so right. Maybe this, and they're going to break it down like you just said.
Okay, I'm gonna let you go in a second, but let me let you go with one thought, or one project, if you'll take this one up. Go out to the library or wherever you need to go to get it. I'm not sure you'll get it in the library here, but you might. Get the autobiography of Big Bill Haywood.
Haywood?
Yeah, Haywood, who was a major figure in the trade union movements back toward the 1900s. He was, amongst other things, he was one of the organizers of the International Workers of the World, that is the IWW. But amongst other things, he was a hard rock miner in the Rocky Mountains. And he describes how workers there, after spending their shift, I believe that back then it was about 12 hours, underground in the mines, would sit in their bunkhouses at night reading Nietzsche, Marx, Engels, all kinds of other philosophers and people dealing with ideas that you don't see people doing anymore. So your perception of how people function, and now we're talking about people who are very hard workers working underground in mines, who are reading this kind of stuff. Therefore, your perception of what people are in any one society is not necessarily valid.
This isn't the problem that you're talking about. That's not the problem of violence. Is 90 years ago, 94 years ago, when you're talking about that, they didn't have as much violence back then. They didn't have the inner city violence that's going on.
I'm not saying they did. I'm just talking. I just gave you that reference in order to see that your perception of society and critical thinking and whether or not it can exist in a society may very well be wrong. And the example is a bunch of hard rock miners who read some very, very sophisticated philosophical works after spending 12 hours in a damn mine.
Maybe my perception on critical thinking is wrong, but I believe yours is also if you think that.
Well, there's only one way to find out, and that's to go back and check out societies and history and the data from it, unless you want to reinvent the world in your brain.
So let's go back and
find out what the data is, and we'll find out who's right and who's wrong here.
Yeah, and then let's tell everybody to change. They need to.
No, you can't tell everybody to change. That doesn't do it. What makes change take place is necessity.
Excuse me?
What makes change take place is necessity.
Necessity for what?
Necessity in order to survive and exist. And as this society goes deeper, as capitalist society goes deeper into crisis, more and more people are going to have to be examining these questions and coming to decisions about them. And they will take up this reading and they will get this education. I can tell you, we do this educating in many countries in the world, and there are places where people are seriously taking up questions of philosophy, certainly Hegel and Marxism, which is in part derived from Hegel, or built on some of the ideas of Hegel, so on and so forth. These ideas are being considered and examined and discussed by young people on the, who would normally be out on the street, by young workers, by workers in general, and being discussed very seriously in a situation where they need to know this stuff in order to survive.
Well, they can consider it all they want, but it's not going to work.
Well, that's your point of view. I'm going to let you go. Let somebody else in here.
All right, thanks.
Thank you. The problem is that everybody wants to build the world in their brains instead of the real world as it is and understand it in order to change it. Yes, go ahead, please.
Yeah, Jack?
Yes.
Yeah, I was hearing what you were saying earlier about the morals in society now, less than they were in earlier times.
I didn't say that. I said they were different.
Oh, different.
Morals change as the basis on which society exists changes. Let's get my English correct.
Well, then what was that point you were making? You were comparing...
The point I was trying to make was that here was a gentleman saying that these morals, what he was saying essentially was that these morals are graven in stone and are unchanging for humanity throughout humanity's existence, is essentially what he was trying to say. And what I was saying was that morals are ideas about how social existence should go on, and it changes. Those morals change as the basis for our social existence changes.
Oh, well, in that case, then I agree with you, because you said you were talking about the Roman society.
Mm-hmm.
You had the gladiatorial games there, and I mean, that would just totally be not accepted in today's society, but...
We have a version of it today, don't we?
What?
Boxing.
Well...
Wrestling. Well, not with weapons and not as deadly necessarily. Occasionally, somebody dies. But we have a version of it today, don't we?
Well, yeah, but I mean...
But it's had much of its sting pulled, of course.
Yeah.
Go ahead, I'm sorry.
Oh, well, I guess I had, the wrong idea about what you were saying.
Okay. What do you do?
I've, taught you before. I'm, a student.
Where at? You told me this.
Grady.
Grady. And I called you, didn't I?
You what?
I've called you on the telephone, haven't I?
No.
Didn't you leave me your number?
No.
Oh, it must have been somebody else at Grady that left the number. Why don't you give me a call? We can talk about this.
Yeah, I called your home number one time.
And I called you back, didn't I?
Answering machine or something.
Didn't you leave a number?
No.
Oh, why don't you call me and leave a number? Then we can sit and talk about this.
What?
why don't you call me and leave your number, and then we can sit and talk about this.
Okay.
Good. You got my number, 627-1887.
Yeah, I got it.
Okay, thank you.
Okay, bye.
Right, bye. I better press the button and nobody else will get in here. Yes, go ahead, please.
Hi, Jack.
Yes.
Where'd you get your suspenders?
Anybody who thinks my suspenders are important enough to talk about, we don't want to talk to you. Yes, go ahead, please.
Hey, Jack.
Yeah,
How's it going?
okay.
That's pretty good. So where does this violence stem from?
Where does it stem from?
Yes, what does it stem from?
If you exist in a society in which you have no future, and in which you have no way of getting what you need, except to take it from somebody, and you have no way of asserting the fact that you're a human being and a man, except to assert it physically, what do?
Well,
I mean, you have no future, you see nothing out there for you, no place to
obviously-
go.
wait. Obviously, none of us have any future since we're all going to die, aren't we?
Well, we don't think about 60, 70, 80, 90, 100 years down the line in the same way.
Well, most
That's the
interstate
general
violence-
background. We have some future, even if it's only 80 or 90 years. We have some future. I'm talking about young people who see no future.
Young people.
No job, no home, no
sexually
wife.
transmitted diseases.
Excuse me?
Sexually transmitted diseases.
Oh, I doubt they even think about that level.
Heart attacks, having sex with other men, by older men like yourself.
I'm not talking about- I'm not-
Rainbow-colored suspenders.
Oh, well.
All good.
That's another yo-yo. Yo-yo city out there. Yes, go ahead, please.
What do you think about gang killings?
Excuse me?
What do you think about gang killings?
About gang... What?
Killings.
Spell it. I can't make out what you're saying.
K-I-L-L-I-N-G. Yes.
Gang killings.
Yes.
I don't think they're very good.
Okay.
That's not the point. Why are you asking?
I just don't like them.
Are you a young person out there, huh?
Yeah.
What do you do? Where do you go to school?
I got a son.
Go where?
Son.
The Sutton? Is that in the Atlanta system or the Fulton system?
Fort.
In Fulton. Where in Fulton?
I don't really know.
Excuse me?
I don't really know.
You don't really know where the school is. What grade are you in?
I'm in 7th.
In 7th grade. Why do you think these killings take place? Why do you think there is this violence out there?
They're just bad.
They're just bad? Are people just bad for no reason?
Yeah.
Are you good for any reason?
I don't know.
You don't know. Did you ever think about it?
No.
Did you ever think about why some people are bad and some people are good?
No.
You think it's something to think about?
Mm-mm.
Well, let me suggest this to you. If you don't think about that, do you think you'll understand why these things take place? Why people kill people?
Yeah.
How can you understand that unless you understand what makes somebody, quote, bad or somebody, quote, good?
I don't know.
Well, can I leave you with that one thought?
Okay.
That you need to think about why some folks are bad and some are good.
Okay.
You might even raise that in your social studies class in school and see whether it drives your teacher crazy.
Okay.
Okay?
Thanks.
Good. Thank you for calling. Let's see, 7th grade, that makes them about how old? 13. Yes, go ahead, please.
I'm about to have a heart attack here on this phone. I was just so mad. That caller that called earlier about the abortion,
I ain't going to say any more. Oh. Yes, go ahead, please.
Jack,
Yes.
me again.
Hey.
You got it all wrong again.
Yeah?
The previous call, or no, you said this. You said that these kids think they have no future. There's nothing out there for them unless they take it. Correct?
That's the way they feel.
Why?
Because it's true. There's no future for them.
You know why?
There is no future for them except to change society, and they don't understand that.
That's completely wrong. The reason they don't feel that is because their parents don't teach them that
Oh.
if they work hard enough, that they can get that. Correct?
From parents who haven't had an opportunity to work hard enough to give them a better life, yes.
They-
You're very logical.
No, if you think about it, if a parent says you can, if you take,
You're not thinking about it.
you are not thinking about it. If you think, listen, if the
When's
parents,
the last time you were in a public housing project?
I
Well, then you don't know anything about the subject.
So you don't think that people in a public housing project?
Let me put it this way. I'm wrong on one thing I just said. I said you don't know anything about the subject. You don't have to go to a public housing project to know the subject and understand the subject.
I know.
You haven't even read about the subject.
No, you don't even think about the subject.
Listen, if people grow up in a home where the parent or parents have not had an opportunity to work, for whatever the reasons are in this society, and their parents before them had no opportunity to work, how are they going to learn anything along the lines of what you're talking about? How can you expect their parents to know to teach them anything along those lines?
See, you think that the reason they don't have any ability to work is because
I didn't say they don't have any ability. They don't have any ability to work.
they don't have the chance to work. Is because you think that the capitalist society does not allow them to work.
When did you look at society last? Have you looked at the many, many middle-class folks who are computer programmers, who are engineers, who are all kinds of developmental people, who are now out of work?
Correct.
I mean, if there's no work for them, how is there work for people who never had an opportunity to learn to read and write and get skills?
Because
And believe me, they don't teach anybody to read and write, anybody much to read and write in the Atlanta schools or the Fulton schools. I'll tell you that right now.
well, I agree with you on that. That the education system that's the difference.
So you're telling me that all these people who don't have access to the main means of information in this society, the written word,
Everybody has access to the information. Never heard of a public library?
you can't read, baby, that's Greek to me.
Would you advise me to go to?
Hey, if that's, you know, if they can't read and write,
Neat.
the public library is Greek.
That's Greek?
Sure, it may as well be written in Greek or any other language except English,
Why?
because they can't read.
You know why? Because they're not taught to work hard in school by their parents. If you're taught,
You don't see that you're going around in circles.
neither you don't see that you completely don't understand this.
Well, okay, I'm going to let you go. We're not going to resolve this between us here. I'll let some of the callers call in and tell you what's wrong. I can't.
Why don't you ever ask me to sit down and talk to you about this?
Come on in here next week.
I will. Where's that?
But you got to come in with some more armament than you've got.
Well, you do too, because I don't see how you hold the show.
190 14th Street. You'll be here at 9 o'clock next week.
What 194?
14th.
All right.
Get my number. It's 627-1887.
All right.
You call me before you come. I want to talk to you before.
Okay.
Okay.
Bye.
Bye. I don't know. Maybe somebody else will tell him what's wrong with his thinking. Yes, go ahead, please.
Jack,
Yes.
hey, how you doing tonight?
Okay, how are you?
I got kind of confused. You've been talking to that same guy, getting like running circles around.
Is he running in circles or is he not?
Well, yeah, he was. You said Atlanta public schools, like North Atlanta, Riverside, Riverwood.
I haven't talked about Riverwood tonight.
No, but I mean that's a public school.
That's a Fulton County school, yeah.
Yeah. What I'm wondering is, I used to go to North Atlanta, and the difference between like they don't teach them how to read.
North Atlanta is where Rosemarie Spearman goes to school, who brought those artifacts to school and was jailed and charged with a felony for doing what her teacher said was okay to do. Yeah, go ahead.
Yeah, we talked about that 2 weeks ago.
Yeah.
The thing is the teachers try. I mean, most of them.
I didn't say they didn't.
Yeah, I know, but I mean, you said they didn't teach them how to read or write. It's the students.
It's the whole fabric.
Yeah, it's the whole. I mean, they're all like, nobody cares, you know. And that's what I think the violence is the work ethic.
Is the what?
The work ethic. If you don't have a good work ethic,
If you don't see a job down the line, all the work ethics in town ain't going to do you any good, are they?
Well, I mean, there are jobs.
You're wrong.
No, I'm right. I'm 16 and I have a job.
What are you doing? Flipping hamburgers?
No, actually, I make about $8 an hour working for the Red Cross.
You're a lucky boy.
No, I just went out and looked.
That's fine. How many jobs are there like that for young people, do you know?
A lot. And all my friends.
I happen to know some young people who have looked for work and can only find hamburger flipping jobs.
It's better than nothing, isn't it?
Huh?
It's better than nothing.
Well, there ain't no future, I can tell you that.
Well, I mean, you work up. You go to college.
And let's not do this round and round again. There are, and if you read the papers, just read the business section of the papers.
I read that today.
Well, it isn't in there today. But 2 or 3 days ago, there was an article about how students coming out of school with degrees are having a hard time finding jobs.
Well, yeah, it's hard. I mean, they're not going to be here.
Well, some of them don't find them, right? Now, if you happen to be a young kid in school...
There's always room for specials.
For what?
For the gifted.
Oh, for the gifted.
Yeah.
But how about the mass?
What about, the mass, they'll have to work it out.
Oh, I see. It's up to them.
But what about...
And if they draw the conclusion that they're not gifted or special, There may be nothing out there for them, and so why waste their time bothering to break their heads over this stuff? They're wrong, huh?
What about survival of the fittest? Darwinism.
Darwinism? Social Darwinism?
Yeah, yeah. I mean, what about it? That's what a lot of...
Somebody was saying something here about that.
Isn't that
About
what it boils down to, though?
social Darwinism, yes? If we had social Darwinism as a species,
Well, no.
we wouldn't be here, would we?
Let me ask you this, Jack. I mean, how is it that you got so fucking fat?
Oh, here we go. I can tell you how I got fat. Why bother? Yes, go ahead, please. That one's gone. Short conversation. Yes, go ahead, please.
Oh, yes, I'd be interested to know what kind of education you received.
Better one than you do. Hey, what do they say? With these phony voices, they can't be read? Yes, go ahead, please.
Are you socialist or communist?
I don't see any difference, as long as you don't equate communism and Stalinism.
Well, do you think the Socialist Party do you think it'll keep rising in Georgia? Or do you think it'll be on the rise? Maybe we can get somebody in Congress?
It don't work that way.
What exactly do you mean by that?
It don't work that way. This is a long discussion and a difficult one. May as well make the announcement. Be at the library on Ponce de Leon at 11 o'clock on this coming Saturday. We're having a meeting. You can come and talk about that question with
11
me.
o'clock Saturday.
11 o'clock Saturday, 11 a.m.
Should I bring my shoes?
If you don't bring your shoes, they won't let you in.
Okay.
And if you need an answer to that question, I don't think you need to come.
I'll bring all my glasses, too,
Yeah.
so that I have them.
What are you going to do? Another joker. World of jokers out there. Yes, go ahead, please. Yes, that's a guitar, folks. If I open my mouth, the phone will ring. See what I mean? All you got to do is open your mouth and the phone rings. Yes, go ahead, please.
Good evening, Jack.
Good evening.
I wanted to further the topic. Oh, I was wondering why you laughed so hard at Darwinism. It's something that, as a species...
Oh, the idea is so old and out of date, though there are people out there who still raise it, that it's absurd.
Well, how is it out of date? Christianity is pretty old also, so is...
Christianity has no validity at all, of course. Social Darwinism in its time was crude as it was, had more basis than Christianity, but it's absurd. If there were such a thing as social Darwinism, most of us wouldn't be here.
As social Darwinism? Excuse
Look,
me, I don't
look,
understand.
humanity exists because humanity is a cooperating, functioning mass.
I don't have to cooperate with anybody to get
You
it.
don't?
No, I do not. First,
Try not paying your taxes.
that's not cooperating.
That's not cooperating. You're right. It's coercion.
That's a gunpoint.
Well, they'll put you at gunpoint if you don't cooperate by giving it to them, right?
Yeah, but that's not cooperation.
Of course it's cooperation.
Look at Sesame Street and have a gun to my head and say, that's cooperation, kid.
You don't understand. There is necessity and only necessity, and that's not free will. And that's your cue telling us what you are. We heard that one. We get some funny ones out there. Yes, go ahead, please. Hello?
Hello, is your name Jack?
It sure is.
What's the main topic of your show? I mean, you just discuss.
I'm going to tell you to sit there and listen and make up your own mind. We're not going to discuss what the main topic of my show is.
Well, I got
Sorry.
one thing I want to say.
What do you want to say?
Turn the TV down. Hold on. Basically, you was talking about schools, right? And as far as some kid called it talking about gangs, this, that, and the other.
That's what I started with. Yeah, go ahead. What do you want to say?
Okay, you started talking about the fact of how a lot of young kids or whatever can't get jobs or whatever.
Mm-hmm.
Well, it's true enough. And the call you had called before.
I know the unemployment rate amongst young black males in this city is 50%.
Yeah, and a lot of people are, they're in denial. They don't really give that fact credit. They try to pretend like
They're
it's not
afraid to give it credit.
true. Yeah, well, it's very true. I mean, but I don't blame other people like white people, for not believing in that because white people have to look out. I mean, they're doing what's right. They're trying to.
What's it got to do with color?
Well, it doesn't have anything to do with color. It has a lot to do with the government. The government is not color. It's an
Listen. There's a lot of black folks out there, not a lot, but some, who will say exactly what these white folks, they sound white anyway, they may not be white, were calling in and saying about jobs, so on and so forth. So it has nothing to do with color.
Yeah, well, that's true. I think it has something to do with the fact the government want to be able to control
It has to do with class.
Yeah, the class of a human.
No, not the class of the human in the sense that you're using it. I'm talking about the social class or economic class.
Yeah, that's very true.
It has to do with whether you're interested in furthering your own pocketbook by furthering big business.
Well, how about this? It might have a little to do with your orientation, your mental orientation about how you see things in the world.
Well, that's one way to see it, yes.
I want to let my son talk for a sec.
Yeah, go ahead.
Okay, Jack, he's kind of shy, so.
Well, tell him to come out of the meeting. How old is he?
15.
15. Those are the kind of young folks we want to talk to. Why don't you bring them along to a meeting Saturday? Excuse me, at 11 o'clock at the Ponce de Leon Library.
Okay, I know what that is. I'll try to get there with him.
Okay, do that. We'll have a serious discussion about this whole question.
Well, I won't forget.
Okay.
Bye.
Thank you. Bye. Yes, go ahead, please.
Jack.
Yes.
Yes, I was calling. I had a couple of questions for you.
Sure.
Okay, my first question is, do you honestly believe that as the U.S., pump enough money into AIDS research today?
If they did what was necessary, they would have solved the problem 5 years ago.
Well, after hearing all this stuff about starting AIDS as some kind of plot to kill off folks, do you really honestly believe in that?
What? I never said that.
No. I'm saying some people are saying it. Do you believe that?
Well, I don't think that's the case.
Okay.
I mean, that's one of those weird conspiracy theories. There are real conspiracies out there without having to resort to that.
Oh, yeah. Should we keep NASA going with messing up and
Excuse me,
stuff?
this is Alfreda. I have an emergency call from Ron White. Would you release the line?
No.
Thank you.
That's the quick way to get rid of these operators that call in with these phony calls. NASA?
Yeah, do you think
We wouldn't run a NASA. We'd let society run that operation, put together its own committee, and give it whatever it needs to do the job.
Okay.
I think that sooner or later we have to leave Earth. This planet is only capable of producing so much for so long.
Well, yeah, but do you really...
And sooner or later this sun goes nova anyway.
Yeah, but do you...
A long way down the road, admittedly, but...
Yeah, a couple of billion years. And do you think that O.J. Simpson... Do you think he's getting a fair trial? I mean, all this stuff...
Did you hear my opening remarks? You've been listening to the whole show?
Well, no, I just flipped to you.
Well, he's just another example of how the prosecution pushes its case. And I'm not saying he's guilty or innocent. I just think that they have really messed that one up fine, but that's what they always do.
And this Shannon Faulkner, about her joining the Citadel, I mean, now she's having troubles with stuff.
I can't imagine why anybody would want to join these paramilitary nuts.
Yeah.
Except that they think like them.
Yeah.
I have no sympathy there.
Okay. And my last question is, well, do you think women should be in the Army? I mean...
I don't think there ought to be an army.
Why?
Because it serves the interests of imperialism.
Well, yeah. Okay. But we needed some kind of...
What do you do?
Well, no, I'm a young man, and I was just calling, listening to your show. I've been following a couple of weeks, but I've been missing it also a little bit.
10 o'clock every Thursday night.
Okay.
Now, what do you do?
Well, I'm not employed.
You're not employed. How old are you?
I'm 15.
Oh, you're still going to school?
Yes.
Where do you go to school?
Well, I'm attending North Atlanta.
North Atlanta?
Yes.
What do you think about the Rosemary Spearman business?
Well, I'm saying to myself, if she was asked to bring in those artifacts and articles, she could do it. I mean, I doubt she intended to hurt anybody with them.
Of course not.
Oh, yeah, that's what I'm like.
What do you think of a principal that didn't stand up and stand in the way of giving her a hard time?
Pardon me?
And what do you think of a principal that didn't stand up and defend her
Well,
instead of turning her over to the cops?
I
don't think very highly of that person.
You agree on that. We're having a meeting Thursday.
Okay?
Not Thursday, excuse me. I'm all mixed up tonight. Saturday at 11 a.m. at the Ponce de Leon Library. You know where it is?
Yes, I do.
Come on by there and let's sit and talk about this stuff, okay?
Okay, you say 11 a.m.?
11 a.m. Ponce de Leon Library, and that's Saturday morning.
All right.
Okay?
Thank you very much.
Right, thank you.
Bye.
Is the operator still there? She's gone. 10 minutes, huh? I don't have a watch out here tonight. I needed to know. But you know me, I'll sit here and talk all night. Yes, go ahead, please.
Hello, Grandpa.
Hopeless. Yes, go ahead, please.
Jack,
Yes.
hey, how you doing?
Okay, how are you?
First, I want to say that I'm appalled by the prank calls you get.
You what?
You should get a call tracing thing.
Oh, we may do that one of these days.
And also about the Rosie Marie Perez thing.
Yeah.
That's what you were talking about like 2 weeks ago or
It's
something?
Rosemary Spearman.
Yeah, I'm sorry. Can you just give me like a quick rundown on what happened? Because
She brought some artifacts to school, African artifacts to school. One of them was a knife, a tribal knife. And she had the permission of her teacher. They turned her over to the cops who charged her with felony.
And she found guilty?
No, they haven't even decided whether they're going to try her. But to go as far as they have, it's a fortunate thing for her that she has a sense of humor about it and calls herself the criminal.
I think that's appalling. I don't agree with that at all.
Of course it's appalling. Are you a student?
Yeah,
How old are you?
17.
Where do you go to school?
I go to military school.
You go to military school.
I liked your comment about the Army not needing one, but we won't get into that.
No, and I won't get into how you got into military school.
Well, I chose to go there.
You chose to go there, okay.
Like you said, you have to like how they think.
That's true.
I like the discipline the way I like. It's better than not having a job. Like you're saying, you always have a job.
Uh-huh.
So I mean, you get out.
Even if the job is killing people who shouldn't be killed.
No. We're not in any war. And if you work on a base, you're not in any
They've
war.
done an awful lot of killing recently, and we haven't been in the war in quite a while.
Yeah, but you can work on a base, build planes. You can work in computers, technology. You can
There's an awful lot of people that thought that was the case when they got sent to Baghdad.
Yeah, that's true. That's part of the duty of having a full-time job without any risk.
Well, if you don't have any compunctions in that direction, I ain't going to argue with you. But I will say this. If you think that what's happening to Rosemary Spearman is wrong, you ought to get out there amongst fellow students, whether it's military school or anybody else you know, and organize a defense group for her.
But how could I find those students?
And you go out in the street and go talk to them. If you want to talk about that, come down to the meeting 11 o'clock Saturday morning.
Where is it at?
Ponce de Leon Library. You know where that is?
Hello?
You know where the Ponce Library is?
No,
This is the operator with an emergency call.
No, we're not going to let go of the line. Go away. It's Ponce de Leon Library, 11 o'clock Saturday morning.
All right, hey, Jack.
Yeah.
Fuck you, Jack.
Excuse me?
Fuck you.
Oh.
Fuck you.
Well, he was more personable up until the end, wasn't he? Proves to be an animal, though. Yes, go ahead. Yes.
Hi, Jack.
Yes.
How you doing? Listen, I'm a little bit disturbed by the ideology, this Marxist ideology that you are throwing around so easily and shaping.
Why are you disturbed by it?
Well, because why is it that you have to put so much faith or so much merit in?
No, the word faith doesn't belong here.
Okay, well, why do we have to put so much merit in particularly dead white men's philosophies and ideologies?
What has it got to do with color?
Well, it has to do with the fact that it's always been the case that Western, mainly European white males have determined and dictate what reason and what truth looks like.
Or why is it a question of color? Why isn't it a question rather of who the dominant class was in that section of the world that advanced technologically?
Well, no, it remains the case today that we still put our trust in ideologies that come from the mainstream, which...
If you want to question Marxism, I would suggest you do it this way, and I see nothing wrong with questioning Marxism. If you do it properly, we get an interesting, valuable discussion, and we both learn something. The first thing you need to do to question Marxism is not question it simply because it's an idea advanced by white men who happen to be German, and that it's an ideology which is prevalent, much more prevalent than most folks think, throughout the world, not just amongst white Europeans. So if you set the color aside from it and deal with it as an idea or as a set of ideas or as a science or a theory of knowledge, whether you agree with it or not, we can get a valuable discussion going. But to deal with it from the question of why do we give value to this white man's point of view by the viewpoint of some folks out there, I'm white. Of course, I tell people who give me that kind of garbage that I'm not really. I've got a red heart and a red body, and I'm red, meaning communist. So, and I think communism and Marxism surmount this whole question of color.
Yes, but what's frustrating to me is that we place so much confidence in people who...
Are you black?
I'm not black. But what I'm...
You're not black?
Let me just say this.
Go ahead.
Is that what's frustrating is that we put so much trust in people who wrote hundreds of years ago, when the reality is that we have progressive thinkers now, like who are black, Cornel West maybe, or
Cornel West. How is Cornel West progressive?
Excuse me.
How is Cornel West progressive?
Well, if we're using that old archaic context of socialist progressiveness, perhaps he's not. But
how is it progressive in your view?
But the reality is, Jack, is that truth is always and has always been a social construct.
What is truthful about and correct about what Cornel West says? Well, aside from laying all the evils and ills.
Well, what's true is that, you know, we cannot break ourselves down into this political dichotomy where, you know, you have the radicals on the right and the radicals on the left.
But that's not the dichotomy Marxism uses.
Well, what I'm saying, though, is that Marxism lands way on the left, as well as some of the other radicals.
Marxism doesn't divide society in that way. Marxism divides societies according to economic class.
Okay.
Now, if you want to argue about Marxism, argue with it from its positions.
But the reality is that for you, Jack, the rhetoric always remains the same.
It's not rhetoric.
And the social context changes.
Listen.
Just like Christianity, just like Marxism, they are ideologies, and they are fixed ideologies, and they cannot adjust to the changes that we see in society.
Well, if that is true, then you will want to discuss Marxism in light of social conditions today, and not simply sit there and make these statements, because my argument would be precisely that Marxism is, as a theory of knowledge, is the only way and the only science we have to understand the development in modern society, and that is an essential to knowing how to deal with society as it is and as it's developing. Marxism, which is based, of course, upon dialectical materialism, says that any theory of knowledge has to be based in its history to begin with and has to flow from that history and develop and analyze everything as it goes on and develops and comes forward. That it's not disconnected. You simply can't sit there and say, well, you know, Marxism, this old thing, let's discard it and deal with, so, you know, modern society, Cornel West, and you still haven't told me what there is that is particularly knowledgeable about Cornel West.
That Marx was the original thinker of that type of of philosophy.
Because Marx and Engels together.
It's a matter of semantics. When you really break it down, other people have said the same thing and continue to say the same thing, adjusting to the social context.
Okay, get my phone number. We got to go. We're getting a wrap-up. My phone number is 627-1887. I'd like that discussion on a serious basis. Give me a call. Let's get together and do it. Okay? Yep. Thank you. Are we really, guys? Is that really a wrap-up, guys? Are we on our way out? Well, are you doing it? Has he told you to? Yeah, there we go. We're on the way out.